Today we're talking about the final episodes of Steins Gate.
This is Animation. Are you ready?
Good day, Animates, and welcome to Animation. I'm Merve, and this is my buddy Blake.
Hello.
And, but see, now I don't know. We're stuck at a...
It's the final episode to talk about Steins Gate. This is the fourth episode we're going to be going through this first season of this show. And we've talked about a lot of stuff. I'm pretty excited to get into this part, though. I've got a really cool tangent in my notes that I'm excited to get into. But first, we should probably get the rating out of the way.
Will you recommend this to us? First comes Rock, John Ken Pon.
So, are you ready to give the final 6-year rating and the OVA included?
I am.
All right. So, here we go. First comes Rock, John Ken Pon.
I stayed with 4.
I did too. I went into these final episodes wanting to give it a 5. Like, I wanted it to end on a perfect note. In my memory, that's how I remembered it. But there's some stuff in there I couldn't. But 4 is still, we both gave the entire season, the entire series of Steins Gate a 4, which is a really good rating. It means
yes, that's very high.
Yeah, we're likely to recommend this to people when we're talking to folks in our everyday life, or you all, Bob, and we will recommend this series. So that's not a bad thing by any means. But there were just a couple little nitpicks I had that kept me from a 5. What about you?
Yeah, it's same thing. I mean, we'll get to it in the dis stuff, but I mean, I really liked it overall, and in fact, I did recommend it to one of my buddies today. Who I was editing one of his stories for him, and it was a sci-fi with similar conceits, and so I was telling him about this and how some of the good things that this anime did. And he's not an anime guy, so I don't know if he's gonna watch it, but I put it out there for him.
I think it translates well enough.
Yeah,
to where
some people could
watch it.
Yeah, some people just can't get past the animation, and if you can't get past like not Steins Gate animation, but just animation, they have trouble taking it seriously for whatever reason. So
yeah, I could see that. Those people are the worst.
Well, maybe not the worst, but
they're
not
bad.
the best.
So, Merv, in your own words, what are the final 5 episodes of Steins Gate and the OVA about?
It is necessary to set the record straight regarding our tale. You must study this series of events. You may find more. You may not.
Okay. These episodes, they started with a plot to basically undo Moika's D-mail by watching the coin locker. He convinces Moika to tell him what her D-mail was about, to get the IBN 5100. She tells him it's in a coin locker. I think that was in the last grouping. And so they stake out the coin locker, Moika and Ocarine, because she decides to come with him and help. And we find out Mr. Braun is FB, which I had predicted, but no one will know. And then Braun kills himself and Moika, but they end up undoing Moika's D-mail, and which allows them to get the IBN 5100, which sets up this really nice choice, because Ocarine realizes if they go all the way back, then Christina or Makase will die. And so he's choosing between undoing this and going to the timeline where Makase dies, or staying in this timeline, or this loop of timelines where Mayuri dies, and continuing to try to stop that which he's already been going through. So he calls off the hack. His first time he decides to let Mayuri die, and it makes him melt down, and it leads to a nice emotional scene where Ocarine tells Makase what'll happen, and leads to a kiss, then the I love you, and Makase basically saying, let me die, let's make this right. Then they set up we only have one chance to go back, so they undo the D-mail, and when they have so Sozuha tells them that they only have one more jump left, so he decides to go back and do the jump, and we basically end up getting the first episode over again, but from a different point of view. And we see that it was Makase's dad that came and attacked her. We see why Ocarine screamed, and it becomes kind of a heist plot, which I thought was cool, of Ocarine trying, like, if I undo this and then if I start this, if I get blood here, I got, because this is rambly. So it ends up being like a heist plot where Ocarine has one last time to go back, and he has to try to make sure that everything happens, everything that his past self sees is exactly how he remembers it, but the outcomes are all different. So like Makase isn't really dead. And he goes back there. He runs into some issues. The fake blood he was going to use is dried up. So he ends up getting stabbed to save the future. And it has kind of an Avengers ending where they come in to help. To we're making a team, and he's going to the past and future members of Future Gadget Laboratories and giving them a little pin, like, I'm starting an Avengers initiative, and going and fixing them up. The OVA was really weird. So they went to America, and it's basically Ocarine and Makase kind of rekindling the stuff that all happened to them in the episodes that she forgot. So in her world line, they didn't have the time together to fall in love, but she keeps dreaming about it. So it's Ocarine basically reigniting those things in her in the USA with a bunch of goofy stuff happening.
So here is my understanding of the final episodes of Steins Gate. D-mails continue to be erased. They are able to cancel Moeka's D-mail and obtain the IBN 5100. Okabe then realizes that Christina, or Makise, will die if the original D-mail is erased, like you said. He struggles to maintain his mad scientist comedic mystique in the face of such serious events, trying desperately to keep Mayuri from dying and save Makise. He gets frustrated and says, I'm not an evil genius, it's a bunch of crap, a fiction. So he starts to lose that je ne sais quoi that he has, right? It really starts to beat him down. Mayuri goes to her grandmother's grave and tells her that she keeps dreaming about dying, and it's in the ways that she actually is dying as Okabe tries to save her. Okabe, or Halloween, whichever name you want to use, tells Makise why he can't delete the final D-mail. She agrees, like the others, to undo the D-mail to save Mayuri, effectively sacrificing herself. They talk about it, they kiss about it. Okabe tells her he loves her. Or does he? So here's where I want to get into a little bit of a tangent, because here in the West, especially, I don't know, in the US, I guess, we throw that phrase around a lot.
Mm-hmm.
My mom was here watching my son today, and when she left, I gave her a hug and told her I loved her, and she told me the same, and I say it to my wife every day. However, in Japan, this is a phrase that does not get used very often. So, I love you is rarely said in Japan, and I'll try to say it. I love you is aishitedo. Aishitedo. And it's, like I said, it's strange to us because we say it all the time, but some of the reasons that they cite are, one, it's very strong meaning, so they think it's frivolous to just throw it around. Also, Japanese are shy about these things. And they also say that I like you feels,
Generally speaking, of course.
yes, generally speaking, right? I'm that's a great point. I'm not trying to generalize or anything like that. This is what the internet said, so it could all be BS
Right.
anyway.
What?
But yeah, but it also says that I like you feels more natural. And then the last one is there's no reason to say it aloud, more of a, I tell you through my actions type of thing, which I can respect that for sure.
I would have a question I should ask my buddy who's a Japanese language instructor. I wonder if they have is there different words in this language? And if you know, write us in the comments below.
Well done. Yeah.
Is romantic love different than like love between friends or love between a mother and son? Like, would you say I love you the same exact way to your wife as you would to your mom, as you would to your buddy?
Yeah, I was looking specifically for romantic love because that's what we're talking about in the show. But yeah, I could totally see there being differences between those things.
Yeah.
But I did watch the Japanese language version to see what he says in that version, because he says I love you in the dub, which is the way we would understand it. But he actually says daisuki-da, Dyeskidah, daisuki-da, which translates literally to big like you. Dai meaning big, skida meaning like you. Or a better translation would be I really like you. So it appears, at least, that in Japan, that is more what is used. And I don't think that's right, wrong, or indifferent. They just, instead of saying I love you, because that doesn't translate real well, they just say I really like you. Like I like you big time. Like big like you a lot.
And that might be culturally a stepping stone, because again, these characters are supposed to be 17, 18 or whatever. So they're supposed to be very young. So it might be awkward culturally. Again, I don't know, for them to say like I love you at 17, which I think it is even culturally awkward in the West. Like in America, we all did it when we were 16, 17.
Yeah, we didn't mean it, but we did it. Yeah,
right. Yeah, we said it. So I wonder if that's why it's changed, even though these characters feel like they're 30. But
yeah, I don't look at them as, again, I think it's a thing where I just always see them as 30, 20, I don't know, adults when they have teenage ages. But the one I couldn't figure out, so again, if anybody knows, put it in the comments below. I couldn't figure out what she mouthed to his back. So there's that part where she's like, pick up that bottle or whatever, and he turns around and she mouths something. And I had my phone up playing the different I like yous and daisuki-das and all this, and none of it matched up. So if anybody knows what she mouths, I would be super interested in what that was. But anyway, I thought that was an interesting tangent to go down, to something to talk through. Back to the story. They go back in time one last time, resetting everything. Mayuri says, very creepily, you can be yourself. None of the bad stuff is going to happen to me. I can tell. You can cry now. And she says this to Okabe, which I thought was pretty creepy and a cool ad, because she's been very, the upbeat, super positive. And then as the show went on, things got a little darker for her. So I thought that was an interesting way to cap that off. The start of the next episode is super confusing if you missed the after credits scene, which is another anime thing where they'll put in vitally important after credits scenes on just some of the episodes. So it's like a way to get you to watch through the credits every time, which is pretty smart, I guess. So it's super confusing, but if you watch the after credits scene, then you're okay. And in the after credits scene, Suzuha calls Okabe saying to meet her on the rooftop the next morning in order to stop World War III. They're standing in front of a time machine with Suzuha. This version knows Daru is her father. She's saying her mission is to save Makise Kurisu and put them into the world line safe from World War III, a place called Steins Gate. So Steins Gate has chosen, for sure, once again. And of course, with it being Steins Gate, that mission was given to Suzuha by the future Okabe. They go back to save Makise, and we're back at the beginning and on the original world line. Makise's father is the one lecturing about time travel. They meet after. She offers him some time travel information. He steals it from her and gets violent. He's a terrible person. Okabe intervenes. The dad pulls a knife. Of course, Makise gets killed in the struggle by fucking Okabe on accident, of course. He screams, which is the scream we heard in the first episode. And we have now entered a save the cheerleader, save the world type of situation. Okabe has lost all hope until he gets a video message from his future self. One of the quotes I like that he says is, "My tricks are as child's play to me." So this is when he starts to get his...
Even though he was wrong. He was wrong about that. Yeah.
Yeah, but what's cool is he's starting to come back into himself after this message, which I love. So Okabe tricks his past self that Okabe has this is terrible. The mission is to trick his past self that Makise is dead, but actually save her. This somehow will fix everything, which is cool. So it fixes everything. Future Okabe, at the behest of even further future Okabe, tricks past Okabe into thinking Makise is dead, even though she's not dead, and this fixes the whole timeline, which is brilliant. Then we have the OVA, or original video animation. The team travels to America to visit Makise and attend some conference. It wasn't real clear to me what that was for.
Wasn't it the tournament for the game?
It was a gaming tournament.
The game that they played. Yeah, okay. That's why Ferris went, because Ferris was the one that was invited, because she was gonna. I don't know what that game is. It seems to play like Android Netrunner, if anyone knows what that game is, where you're looking for viruses and like trying to hack. But that's why they went.
So was it Ferris that invited them, or was it Makise?
Yes, okay. And that Ferris invited them and bought them a hotel room that Okabe then didn't want, so they had to stay in the crummy hotel.
That makes way more sense. For some reason, I thought Makise had invited them, and then she seemed confused about them being. So that makes way more sense. I lost my spot. All right, so the OVA seems pretty random, but it's entertaining. My favorite question about the OVA is, or I guess comment, is all of a sudden magically they speak English perfectly because they go to America and they're talking to people in America. And these 17-year-old kids just speak perfect English, which is very impressive. Very impressive. And I still don't know what she mouthed to his back, which is a bummer because that plays into the final scene. And Makise and Okabe are in like again, and everything turns out happy, which I liked. So the end.
Yeah, they're in big like.
Yeah, they're in big like, big time. So that's to me what the final episodes of Steins Gate are, and I really enjoyed the series. However, with all of that said, even though this was a really good cap to all of these episodes we've watched, there were some things that were not fantastic. But before we get into that, from a writer's perspective, no way, man, never again. From a writer's perspective, how did they do with these last episodes?
Regale us with your wit, storyteller.
I mean, I think they did a really good job. Again, there's a couple of things I'm going to talk about. And again, they landed on a great choice. Your girlfriend who you love perishes, or you're basically your sister. perishes, and you have to choose one. Okabe has to choose it. It breaks him as a person, changes, makes him really dislike everything he's done, kind of give up that persona as childish, and it really changes him as a character, and it's just a really nice setup. But I've talked about that over and over. So what I'm going to talk about is they did a good job in this with restraints, and restraints are always add tension. The way Hitchcock explains it is, if you have two people talking about breakfast and they're at a table and they're, talking about crepes and what's better, eggs Benedict or sausage, biscuits, and gravy, it's sausage and biscuits and gravy. And then suddenly they blow up. It's weird. There's nothing interesting about it.
Up?
Yeah, the whole table blows up. Everything they blow up.
Yeah.
But if you show these two people talking about breakfast and they get finished with their breakfast, and then you show under the table that there's a bomb and there's a time on it, like, 3 minutes, and then it goes back to them, and one of them's like, I actually like crepes better than eggs Benedict. And as an audience member, now this is a silly example, but it's Hitchcock's, and so you can't, he's Hitchcock, so you have to deal with it. You're suddenly tense. Pay the bill and get out of there. Why are you talking about crepes? And it ups all the stakes. And they do that in this with the time machine, which you have to do with a time machine. And it's a little bit of a cop out, but I also liked it because they have they only have enough gas. There's nothing about what powers a time machine. There's nothing about how do we get more gas. There's literally, we only have gas for one more jump. So we have to get it right on this jump, because that is a problem with time travel films or books or stories in general, is that you're always like, well, why don't you just travel back in time? And there's even a Harry Potter where they have a time travel Horrocks, and then they just never use it again. And after that book, you're like, why don't you travel back in time? Use the time. Why don't you travel? And so you have to put these restraints on things.
Yeah, didn't Hermione spend a whole semester using that to be able to get more stuff done?
Right.
So it's not like it was just a small thing. She was using that for many months, presumably, to...
Right, and then never again. Yeah.
Yeah, don't use that anymore because it breaks the story. You're right. Time travel is terrible.
It's rough.
I never questioned it here because of two reasons. One, like you said, there always seemed to be some limit, some restraint, which I think that's a great pickup. The other reason is it always seemed to goof something up. Like if you look at all of the changes that they made, they ended up having to redo all of them.
Right. And it set up those nice choices.
Right. So really, time travel in this wasn't the solution until the end. It was the problem.
Right.
Until the end. Right.
And
so I think that was handled really well. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a great way to do it. And so what this gets into a little bit is hard and soft sci-fi or hard and soft fantasy. So the idea is a hard science fiction story is going to be like Star Trek in many ways. There's science behind everything. Everything's explained to you. And soft sci-fi is going to be, I would call Steins Gate soft sci-fi, because we don't know what gas the time travel uses. The rules are a little bit loose. I hooked a phone up to a microwave and made a time machine. Now I hooked headphones up to it and it sends my consciousness back in time. We don't get a huge explanation of it. So it's soft sci-fi, and it works in this story. We don't need to be told everything. We don't need, but if we get a dilithium crystal, then we can jump back in time 3 times. It just works to say there's not enough gas. You can get also hard fantasy is stuff like Brandon Sanderson, where the magic system is really clear, or a lot of superhero stories are also hard fantasy because we know what the powers are. We know what their restraints are. So there's hard fantasy, and then you have soft fantasy like Star Wars. yes, Star Wars is fantasy, not science fiction.
Yeah, because there's magic powers and stuff. Yeah.
There's magic, and also there's the light side and the dark side. There's the big evil bad guy. Those are all fantasy tropes, not sci-fi tropes. So sci-fi generally has more moral ambiguity. But there's just magic.
One thing that's interesting is about what you're saying, this hard versus soft, is a lot of critics, especially on the internet, will pick apart anything soft in anything. And they'll be like, well, why didn't they explain the time travel gas thing? That's a big problem with this story. And it's, to me, it always, I don't know, it always kind of takes away some of the credibility of that criticism, because it's like those are easy pickings, and they don't always, to me, cause problems. And I know we don't like to do callbacks to previous episodes and stuff, but I always tend to bring up, like, I don't need to know how that worked. I don't need to know. I mean, as long as it is cohesive and it's entertaining and it's creative, everything doesn't need to be explained to me. And a lot of folks online just hard charge right into that.
If you have like soft fantasy, like Lord of the Rings, where the magic system is very ambiguous, we don't know what Gandalf's powers are. We don't know what he can do. If he shows up and suddenly he has a spell that brings them straight to Mordor, and he can destroy the ring with his spell, and it saves the day, then that's when it's a problem, is when it shifts or when it's unexplained but gets the characters out of a jam, is when it can be a problem. If it gets them into a jam is unexplained, like time travel in Steins Gate, it is fine. You're getting them into a problem. Coincidence can always get characters into problems. If it pulls them out of problems is when it's often jarring to the audience or feels cheap or anything like that. But the minute time travel becomes the thing that's getting them out of a problem, we put a bunch of restraints on it. We can only do this once. You can't meet your past self. We have to set everything up so it becomes hard science fiction in many ways, where we're explained the rules so that where we don't feel cheated if the rules are broken. If Batman is fighting somebody and we know what Batman can do, we know he has his batarangs, but he's just a regular human, and then suddenly he flies into the air, turns into a giant bat, grabs the guy and eats him, we go, wait, what happened? And then he flies away. We're left very unsatisfied. It's a Deus Ex Machina, the ghost of the machine, or God in the machine, also called the hand of God, where something will come in and just save the day. Some people do criticize Lord of the Rings.
So what about kryptonite? What about kryptonite? Is kryptonite a problem or not in this vein?
Well, it's part of the hard fantasy of Superman. Well, Superman's been around for a long time, and his powers do kind of shift. So, but generally speaking, modern Superman is hard fantasy because we know all the rules. We know kryptonite makes him weak. We know he needs the yellow sun to gain his powers. We know he can make things cold. We know he can eye beam things. We know he can fly, and we know he's like super strong and basically has impenetrable skin. If suddenly Lex Luthor made a kryptonite suit and started to attack Superman, and Superman went, "You fool, I'm no longer immune. I'm now immune to kryptonite because I ate oatmeal this morning with raisins in it," and we'd be like, well, that's a cheap out for Superman, because the rules are this way, and the rules suddenly changed just so he could get out of this situation. That's when that hard soft stuff matters. So if people are online, and I see it a lot too, and it's very easy to do. It's usually people trying to like sound smart, like, oh, I figured out what the writer missed. Well, a lot of times it's not. Soft sci-fi is great. Like space opera is super fun. Buck Rogers and that kind of thing. John Carter. These are super fun, and they're very soft sci-fi. Hard sci-fi can be really fun too. Things like Inception or Interstellar.
What's the one on Amazon? What's the one that's on Amazon right now?
Altered Carbon.
No, that one's pretty good too, but it's the reason I think about it is, I mean, they explain all the rules and it's super grounded.
Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
It's called The Expanse. I didn't even find it. The Expanse. It's called The Expanse.
Oh, I was just gonna say, is it The Expanse? Yeah, I wondered if you were talking about The Expanse. I've read Leviathan Wakes, the first book of The Expanse series.
Yeah, the show is excellent.
I understand the show is better than the book, and I could go on a huge tangent about why the book fails. But if you want to see that, write in the comments below. Merve, please explain to us why Leviathan Wake doesn't work.
Awesome. And I was wondering, because you had mentioned Game of Thrones being a soft fantasy before, and I didn't know what that meant, so I appreciate you going through that.
Good. Okay.
All right, now that we've talked through it, let's talk about the stuff that we did not like so much about these last episodes. What do you have for the diss track?
I see you have made your decision. Now let's see you enforce it.
The first thing that the reason this didn't like blow me away and get up to that 5, it still blew me away, I would say, but it didn't big blow me away, is that it tonally lost a lot of the humor and got really serious. And so a couple of these episodes, like 20, 21, and 22, were really flat to me. It's just serious note on serious note on serious note, with very little humor mixed in, with very little like positive outcomes happening. And so so emotionally I was feeling flat and I don't want to say bored, because bored isn't the right word, but it was kind of sloggy to get through that emotional moments, those emotional episodes, multiple emotional episodes.
Yeah, you're right. It was tonally significantly different, especially as Hoenn Okabe starts to lose his way a little bit or lose his enthusiasm. You can tell that he carries this series. I mean, obviously, right? He's the main character, but in those episodes, you can really tell he carries the series, because I felt the same thing. Now that you mentioned it, those kind of middle episodes in these last few that we watched were harder to pay attention to. In fact, I remember walking away from it a few times because it didn't grab me like a lot of the other ones did.
Yeah, and that's why.
Yeah, that's intuitive. One of the things I have is, and I know this is a little contrived, but what's the point of a show where everything gets erased, but it's fine in this? I mean, I think that's kind of an easy jab, right? Why would we care about
You're just trying to sound smart.
No, exactly. It's what most people on the internet probably complain about, right? But here I think it works because, one, that's not even true. All of those things actually happen. And this is proven as they start to get the memories, even the people that aren't Okabe, through dreams and other things, start to get the memories of the other world lines, which means it's not that way. Actually, all that stuff did happen. So I have it on my list, but I had to cap it off with it's totally fine in this, because it's not a correct criticism, but
it's why end of the world plots, and this is kind of an end of the world plot, but in general it's not, because it's just end of a certain world. But end of the world plots are often boring to me. Like, if you don't do this, the whole world's going to be destroyed, because it's either they do it and the world isn't destroyed and I know that's what's going to happen, or they don't do it and the world is destroyed, and why did I watch this story?
It's interesting you have that, because I actually have as a diss the whole World War III thing. Here's the thing. I could not have cared less about the World War III thing. It was interesting because I thought about this specifically, one hand, they needed to save the entire world from World War III. And on the other hand, they needed to save Christina.
Right.
And I cared 150,000 times more about
Yes.
saving Christina than I did about the entire world. So to me, it's the diss is they could have just taken that out. That could have been like not there. And to me, it would have been just as, if not better. Like I didn't need any of that end of the world stuff. Do some people need that? I don't know. Maybe.
I don't think anyone needs it. I think in this, it was a plot device to get Suzuha involved, and then John Teeter stuff. They wanted to use the John Teeter stuff and get that stuff involved. But it's a good example because a lot of writers do stuff like that. Well, I'll make it about the end of the world, and that'll really make people care. But it doesn't. You make the things people care about in this are, we want Maori to live. We want Roka to get whatever she wants. We want Makase to get published and be famous. We want the little things. Those are the things we want because we care about the characters.
Another thing I have is at the end of the last official episode, as they kind of pass each other, Makise seems to start to get her memories back of what had occurred on the other world lines. And then as we get into the OVA, that's all gone for the purpose of the plot of that last OVA. And then we have to retread that again for the emotional payoff of that last scene, which, I thought that was fine, but it just shows that they didn't know they were going to do that OVA, because otherwise they've been so smart about the story, that conflict wouldn't have been there if they knew they were going to write that. But I don't think it was great that they retreaded that whole thing. They should have, I don't know, maybe done something different there. But I thought that was a little bit of a negative where they kind of retread the Makise remembers Okabe again thing.
I thought both those things, I wanted that to just end with them walking past each other, because that would leave us with hope that, they're together, they're near each other and they might come together again, but not give us the exposition of, I remember him and this happened. And I didn't, and it would maybe make the OVA a little better. The OVA was, I didn't need it. Again, it was also flat for me because it was just all off the wall humor for pretty much all of it until the last 4 minutes. And so that was very flat. Even though some of the jokes were funny, it was like joke, 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 joke. And so if you're always at a 10, then that's the same as always being at a 1. So that was a diss for me. Another thing, here's a little hard, soft sci-fi diss. I don't know how they know Maori isn't going to die in the first timeline, because they never go to the day that she would die before going back in time. So they're just assuming, they just know she doesn't die in the original world line, even though she might still die on that, what it would be 2 days later or whatever.
Yeah. The only throwaway line that helps with that, and it's when she creepily says to Okabe, "You can be yourself. None of the bad stuff is going to happen to me. I can tell. You can cry now." So maybe that was supposed to be them saying she somehow knows that she's going to be okay. Maybe.
Yeah, that was before they undid everything?
It's at the very end.
That's after they did it.
Yeah.
After they've already done a bunch of stuff to try to make sure to get back to that world line, thinking that, this will for sure, kind of knowing.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, you're saying that why do all that if they don't know for sure?
That was their motivation, right? Their motivation was off for me, because I'm like, how do they know she's not going to die?
Just because the thought is if they can get the divergence meter over 1, it will. And the cause of Mairi dying was because of the change of I don't know. I could see that.
Yeah, it just didn't seem to be had in the original timeline. If they had been way past, we were months into the future and we know that Maori doesn't die in the original one, but they weren't. They were 2 days. into the future, and it's longer than that, especially as they went back, it kept pushing it further by a day. So I wish that was a little
That's a deep
tighter.
cut though, man. That is a deep cut. So you can tell
I'm trying to sound smart.
you can tell we're grasping at straws to find things to really dislike about this at this point. I mean, I think we've talked about the major thematic ones.
I have one more thing. John Teeter, or Sozuha, always hates Makase for being a CERN spy, but we never know why.
No payoff for that. Yeah.
I was waiting for that payoff because I liked that tension in the team so much. I was like, how are they going to make this work that Makase is actually a CERN spy? There's got to be some sort of clever misunderstanding that everyone took one way, but is actually another. But no, it's just in there.
She wrote the paper that somehow through psychic ability Suzuha found out she wrote.
Right.
All right. What were some of your favorite things?
I mean, and this is like, I keep saying this over and over, but that choice Okabe has to make and how it breaks him as a character and how he looks at himself and is introspective. That's everything good about storytelling. A huge strong emotional choice between basically his sister and the woman he loves, and his feeling of utter failure, and basically the choice breaks him to a point where he is angry at everything he is and everything he has done. And it's a perfect example of a bad versus a bad choice. In one, his sister dies, and the other, the woman he loves, dies, and he is the one that has to decide which way that goes, and that's as good as it gets in terms of storytelling.
It seems to ramp up bad or bad choice to bad or bad as they're undoing all this, right? To the final bad or bad choice that is, above them all. And I already talked about this a little bit, but they're saving Makise and giving Okabe and Makise the opportunity to be together, and they're saving the world. And we didn't even care about saving the world as much as, so to me, that's really good character development. I mean, if we are so zeroed in on these characters that we care about them more than the world, then that's pretty good writing, I would say. I do have some of the funny stuff. I thought the customs part was super funny. I thought the police part was super funny.
All right, chums, I'm ready, guys. Let's do this.
I thought the Leroy Jenkins
I mean, that's a
call out was super funny. That's a deep cut.
It's a deep cut.
Leroy, you were just stupid as hell.
At least I have chicken.
But it wasn't in 2011 or whatever when that happened. Yeah.
No. Could you imagine watching that now as like a young person and they're like Leroy Jenkins, or it would just go, no idea. So I thought that was pretty good. The U.S. weather girl had very big personalities. She was very stereotypical American girl. Those are what I have for the comedy ones. What else do you have?
And almost all of those were the OVA.
Yeah.
And and they just came like one after the other. And the original ones were funny and the edits were funny, but then for me it was like it got going. I wish there was more of that humor in the actual episodes.
Yeah.
Got tonally so deep. Makase and Ocarine, again, I kind of wish it had just been them walking past each other, but he got to save the world and the woman he loves with her help and with everyone doing their part. Like I said, it became kind of a heist plot, which is like one of my favorite things, like in Ocean's 11, kind of where you have this person's good at this and this person's good at this, and we have to bring it all together and we have a plan, and then the plan doesn't go according to plan and we have to figure out ways to change things. And those things that were changed, him being stabbed, was emotional. for him to get that, because he needed the blood, so he needed to get stabbed. And so things didn't go according to plan, but still worked out, and still worked out in a clever way. We still heard his yell. We still heard everything else going on. And so it made it a very satisfying ending, where it worked out the way we wanted to, but not the way we thought it would.
So Okabe realizes in order to save Mayuri, that Makise would need to die. And she's doing this typical story thing where she's like, why won't you tell me why we can't do this? And he's being dodgy. And I feel like a lot of, I don't know why this is, maybe you have some comments on it, but I feel like a lot of stories would not have him tell her why. Would not have him say, because you're going to die, right? They would have him figure out another way to do that, to solve for it without actually telling her. And I really liked that he relents and tells her, it's because if I undo this to save Mayuri, you are going to die. And I thought that added so much to the stakes. It added so much to the emotional level of the story. And I just love that they went there. And for some reason, I feel like I've seen that play out in other stories where he won't tell her because he doesn't want to tell her that she's going to die. So he has to figure out a way around it.
Yeah. And what I like about that setup is that as a viewer, this was inevitable. We should have known right from the start. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
If they undo all this stuff, Makise dies.
Yeah.
But admittedly, I didn't even think about it until he realized it. And that's nice. The ideal is you want the viewer or reader to realize the twist like a minute before it's revealed, because it makes them feel a little bit smart, but it also is a long time. You've tricked them for most of the show. And yeah, it was like just when he started saying like, oh, let's undo all this, and I was like, wait, Makise's, and then they reveal it's like almost at the same exact time that happens. It's such a nice setup. From the very beginning of the show, the first scene even, right? The first scene of the show, and it pays off in almost the last scene.
There was one part that was kind of funny that was in the end of the main episodes, and it's when they're actually having this conversation about what's going to happen, and they get caught in the rain on the roof, and they end up kind of running into, I don't know, some kind of area, and they're soaking wet, and Makise's all wet, her shirt's all wet, and she catches Okabe looking in her direction, and she's like, oh, you're such a perv. And Okabe says, hey, it's not like I was trying to ogle you, okay? Your penchant for sheer clothing can hardly be held against me. And Makise says, guess I forgot what a typical male you can be. And Okabe responds, huh? Like I'd go to any undue trouble to catch a glimpse of your scrawny. And she says, finish that thought and I'll smack you so hard your cerebral neocortex will be pudding. And Okabe says, yeah, you'd like that, wouldn't you, zombie? As he charges towards her. She says, hey, get out of my face. She notices a tear in his lab coat. And she says, was that always there? And he says, I must have snagged it on something while I was looking for you. And Makise says, God, you're klutzy. And he says, because I use my points on intelligence, not dexterity.
Yeah, a D&D reference.
Yes, so good. I didn't add this to the disc, though. One thing that I was kind of bummed about is I was really hoping there was going to be a moment where the torn coat with the stitching would have revealed something, right? Like multiple Okabes would have gotten to some sort of mess of who's who, and then we would have noticed who was who because of the, I don't know.
Yeah, it could have been. It felt like a setup. It did feel like a very important thing, and she's even like, I don't know what color of thread you're getting. It might be white, it might be black, it felt like a big setup, and as a viewer, yeah, we're watching it. But it was a really nice moment. And yeah, that was funny. And in fact, I have in my disses, I say it's serious. It gets serious tonally until that kiss moment, until that kiss scene, and then it like opens back up. And I think that's like two episodes from the ending or whatever. So it slogged a little, but it really picked up. And so maybe if you watch all those episodes together, you know, it has that shift change. It would have been nice if there was a little bit more, but it ends up finishing strong, which is the most important thing.
One thing to consider is these come out weekly. So each of these come out weekly in Japan. So you're going to see, you know, each of these episodes kind of separate from each other. I don't know if that makes it better or worse, but I did like Maki-sei's response to the intelligence, not dexterity thing, because she's never to be one to be outdone. I mean, I think we could learn a lot here in the West about how to do strong characters of either gender, where that doesn't matter, because she always just is right at his level. And she responds with, "Sure, you did. Whatever gets you through the night, dark elf." And I don't know, another like D&D reference there was her. She's always got a witty response.
Dark elves do not get a bonus. They get a bonus to dexterity and charisma. Yeah, like I said, it had a strong finish. The setup, the payoff of that finish from the first episode, the emotion of it, everything worked there for the wrap up.
So we would both recommend this series. We have now spent, you know, minus what gets cut out when we talk, we probably have now spent...
You cut stuff out?
6 hours.
It's all gold.
Actually, not near as much as I was thinking I would. I leave a lot of the stuff in, which is sweet. But we've now spent about 6 hours talking about this series, and I would say we've become intimately familiar with it. It's going to be quite strange to move on to something that's not Steins Gate, but it must be done. Maybe at some point we'll come back to the second season, which I have not watched either. But we've got some movies and shows coming up that we're going to talk about next. Is there anything else before we go that you would like to talk about regarding Steins Gate?
I don't think so. I think that wraps it up brilliantly. I might add.
Yes, very good series. Definitely watch it.
No, I meant we wrapped up our podcast brilliantly.
Oh yeah, that too.
That's
probably.
Yeah,
I don't know. They'll tell us right down below But I think it's a great, if you're starting or if you've never seen it, I think it's a great one either way to look at, especially if you're smart. And anyone who's going to make it this far into this show is quite intelligent. So definitely check it out.
Have you joined us yet? If not, then I'm sorry. I won't be sharing my dinner with you.
If you want to support the show, otherwise, I'm not going to say the other things that people say because it's super cringe. Have a great time in life.
Well, not in life. I mean, we want to see him again. Come back next week. Thanks for showing up.
Yeah, thanks for showing up. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Yeah, come back next week. But still have a good life.
It's over for you. You're done. But you'll be back.